Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, it's the post-game pod from the Timberwolves Game 4 win and series sweep over the Phoenix Suns. Anthony Edwards drops 40, a poster dunk, a massive second half. Also, Karl-Anthony Towns, best game of the series. Lots to get to today. A celebratory post-game pod. It's all upcoming. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, like many people, I have a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. Happy Monday, everybody, and it is a victory Monday. The Timberwolves win Game 4. They win the series. They sweep the series over the 6th-seeded Phoenix Suns, and it was incredible. Game 4 was incredible, a really fun game. Karl-Anthony Towns consistent throughout, his best game of the series, and Anthony Edwards just 9 points in the first half, finishes with 40, and really puts the Suns to sleep down the stretch. Just a phenomenal Anthony Edwards performance. So much to get to today. Obviously, there's also the horrible Chris Finch injury. We'll talk a little bit about that. Lots to get to here today. Big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And you can follow on X at Locked On T Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. All right, let's start with the Chris Finch injury because that's, as I'm recording this, it just broke that Shams Charania reported first, and then John Krasinski of The Athletic chimed in that, but I guess they're both at The Athletic as well. Chris Finch has a ruptured patella tendon, which is obviously a horrible injury and surely excruciatingly painful. So we'll see what that means moving forward. Of course, Mike Conley was kind of nudged into Chris Finch on the sideline with under 2 minutes to play in the game. And Finch was kind of caught at the end of the scorer's table area and the seats there and didn't really have anywhere to go. And immediately it looked bad and it looked like a knee. And that's what it was. So no idea, of course, what that means in the coming days. I'm sure there's a surgery. The Wolves won't play until the earliest the next series would start would be Saturday. That's if Denver wins Game 5 Monday night over the Lakers, closes that series. Then the Wolves could play either Saturday or Sunday. I would imagine they'd play Saturday. Would be my guess, unless there's no other series that end through just 5 games. Like if the Thunder don't manage to close it out Monday either, then perhaps Wolves Game 1 of the next series could be pushed to Sunday. But either way, Saturday is the earliest it could be. I would imagine that's a surgery that's got to happen sooner rather than later. And who knows, it's too early to say what Finch's presence would be. I'm sure he would still be around and everything immediately following the surgery and would probably still be able to be near the bench, I would think. It's obviously going to change his routine in terms of standing and walking, all that stuff related to being on the bench. But lots of cool pictures. Obviously a horrible situation, but cool pictures coming out with the players and Finch after the game, surrounding him in the locker room and having one-on-one moments with Finch after the game as well. So obviously, hopefully that is something that can I don't know. There's no good way to there's nothing good that comes out of this, right? Like it's just horrible, bad luck, terrible that all that happened. Hopefully it doesn't impact the preparation too much for round 2. Obviously the concern is with Finch's well-being, but I'm sure the surgery can get things corrected here very quickly. So that was weird, fluky. I don't know that I've ever seen that before. Certainly it happens occasionally in football with coaches on the sideline, rarely the head coach, right? It's not something you see a whole lot of. So tough situation all the way around. In terms of the game, I mean, this was a really fun game. It was the best game of the series in terms of well played by both sides. There were certainly moments, especially in the first half, of just very sloppy basketball. But that happens in any given basketball game. I mean, there was a stretch, I think it was third quarter, where like both teams were making just impossible shots. It was just high level basketball on both ends of the floor. It was no question the best Phoenix has played. And there were stretches in this game where Minnesota looked as good as they have all series as well. So in terms of both teams collectively, this was the best game of the series, and it was certainly entertaining. And, early in the game, it was foul trouble that first Yusuf Nurkic with 2 fouls, then Rudy Gobert, both picked up. I think one of the two for each of them was kind of a cheapie that, letter of the law, it's a foul. Maybe don't put yourself in that spot in a game 4 of a playoff series for both of those guys. But it led to both teams playing small. And of course, Phoenix kind of had to anyway. And, they were planning to anyway when Nurkic was off the floor. And the Wolves are comfortable playing quote unquote small, because small for the Wolves is still having a center on the floor, just only one instead of 2, right? Like, that's the difference. And we'll talk a lot about Karl-Anthony Towns, but he picked up a ton of slack with the Rudy foul trouble in this game. And the Wolves were more than comfortable playing small, but also they didn't really play small because they didn't actually play a backup point guard in this game. Chris Finch didn't use Monte Morris or Jordan McLaughlin, and it was Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Kyle Anderson that initiated offense with the bench unit. So the Wolves never had anyone other than when Mike Conley was out there. They didn't have anyone under 6'6". How tall is Nickeil Alexander-Walker? 6'5". The Wolves just played, not positionless basketball, but their adjustment to the Suns' adjustment was like, all right, we'll play quote unquote small because of the Rudy foul trouble, but we're still going to play big because everyone in our lineup is massive and we're all, flexible defensively and switchable and completely versatile. And basically everybody can handle the ball in the perimeter. It's remarkable that this is still, we're how many years removed from like the Warriors death lineup where it was, just complete small ball. And that's where everybody thought this was going. And now the Wolves do the exact opposite. It's the classic zig when everyone's zagging. And I talked about this quite a bit in the offseason. It's a gamble, right? It's certainly a roll of the dice for the Wolves to build the roster in this way. But this is a more macro, and maybe I'll get into this a little bit on Tuesday. We've got all week to prep for likely Wolves Nuggets, right? But on a macro level, you look at the roster building of the Suns and the Wolves, and it's not close. Like, the actual amount of talent on the roster, 1 through 10 or whatever you want to do on the Wolves, is so much greater than the talent on the Suns. I mean, the Suns had to play. Nasir Little had I don't think he'd played in this series. And he played 7 minutes. They benched Drew Eubanks. He didn't play. Eric Gordon played 39 minutes off the bench for this team. He didn't log a single stat besides shooting the basketball. I didn't mean for Eric Gordon to catch a stray in the first 6 minutes of this podcast, but he did. 6 points on 7 shots for Eric Gordon, 39 minutes. He was third on their team in minutes played. 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks. 0 fouls. The man managed to not commit a foul in 39 minutes. It's like he wasn't on the floor. The Timberwolves were not in that position. Now, they only played 8 because it was, a game 4 of a playoff series. You tighten your rotation. And, that the response, as I said already, was like, let's play bigger. I mean, Monte Morris was getting cooked a little bit with the size of the Phoenix Guards. Now, next series is going to be different, right? Monte Morris is going to play in the next series. I mean, he played in the first 3 games of this series. And maybe even McLaughlin. I mean, McLaughlin may play too, right? Monte Morris probably was the backup point guard in the first 3 games just because he provides a little more size against the big Suns lineup. That, Chris Finch may flip that in the second round. We may see McLaughlin as part of the rotation. Anyway, I thought that was creative by Minnesota, and it was a way to get Kyle Anderson involved and on the floor and make him be active and impactful with the ball in his hands, right? You can't put Kyle Anderson in the corner because he's not a spot-up threat. But with the ball in his hands, he can put the ball on the floor and he can score and he can also create. And also the size of Kyle Anderson effectively playing the backcourt in this game, and also defensively, was the right way to use him in the series. So I thought that was really creative. I want to talk about the middle portion of the game. I want to talk about the certainly Ant and certainly Cat. There's a lot to get to in this game. So we'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends over at Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what the adventure might be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class-exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. Nissan's incredible lineup also includes the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder. It has room for up to 8, an expansive cargo capacity, and advanced available 4x4 capability. With 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing, when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. Today's episode is also brought to us by our title sponsors over at Monopoly Go. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that. And look, there's so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique minigames like digging for treasure or robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win, or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. Get off the bench and go download it now, free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Do you watch Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? If you do, no doubt you have to turn down the volume because of all the shouting. Instead, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right. So, I did want to talk a little bit about how the Wolves have won in different ways. And I'm not going to go blow by blow for this game. I try not to do that on post-game pods. I mean, you can go watch the highlight package on YouTube if that's what you're looking for. Instead, I want to pull out a couple of themes from this. I think, I talked a little bit about the rotation already. I think when it comes to winning in different ways, like this ended up being an Ant second half, but like Rudy Gobert was such a big part of these first wins in this series. And he was good in this game, no doubt, when he was on the floor, but he only played 25 minutes. Karl-Anthony Towns was awesome. And until Ant went nuts late in the game, Cat was the best player on the floor in the first half. There's no question. I would even say, like, I know that Booker ended up scoring 49, and I know that Durant ended up with 33. Devin Booker shot 21 free throws. I mean, come on. Karl-Anthony Towns was likely the best player on the floor, period, in the first half of this game. You could argue for Durant. I thought he was really good in this game. But as I said many times, I think early last week I made this point after the Wolves were up 2-0, or I guess it would have been 1-0 because they won Saturday. They played Tuesday night. So it was Monday or Tuesday of last week when the Wolves were up 1-0. I talked about how the Timberwolves calculus here was, let's put the biggest body we can on Durant. He's going to score. Let's at least make it a little bit difficult by putting Cat's size on him, and then it frees up McDaniels. It frees up Ant, and then also Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So two of those three can be on the floor and be guarding Booker or Beal at all times. And they can, do a better job with those guys. And Cat can at least stay in front of Durant for the most part and contest his shots, make it difficult. But if he scores 30 plus, fine. And that's exactly what they did in the series. Durant was good. Like, he was good throughout. This was his best game of the series, I thought, overall. But the Wolves still won by multiple possessions. Despite Durant and Booker combining for 82 points, nobody else in the Suns scored more than 9, including Bradley Beal, who is 4 of 13, missed a bunch of bunnies at the rim, was 1 of 5 outside the arc, and is owed like $1 kajillion over the next 3 years. It was like that was the calculus, right? It was make somebody else beat us, and Durant's going to score, and very likely Booker's going to score on some level, and Booker was good in this game. I don't want to take too much away from him. He was solid. But that was the calculus the Wolves had, and Cat did his part. I thought Cat was good defensively in this game. I thought he was very good. Durant made some tough shots. Cat did end up committing 5 fouls. I don't believe none of them were offensive fouls. He had 0 turnovers in this game too. This was a masterful Karl-Anthony Towns performance. It really was. Best player of the floor in the first half. Really good in the second half. He finished with 28, 10, and 3. No turnovers. 11 of 17 shooting. 4 of 6 outside the arc. 2 of 3 at the line. He had a couple of big plays late. In fact, his hustle play, I think the Wolves were down a bucket. They might have been down 1 at the time. 1 or 2. And I forget who shot it. The Wolves missed a shot. Cat crashed from the left corner. This is like midway through the fourth quarter. Cat crashed from the left corner, beat his man to the ball. And instead of trying to go back up and score, when he was kind of like came down on the edge of the paint on the other side of the rim, on the right side of the rim. And instead of trying to go back up and force something, he makes the right play, shovels it to Ant in the corner for a wide open 3. He makes it. The Wolves take the lead. I believe it was a lead changing play. And, it was massive, an absolutely massive rebound and decision by Karl-Anthony Towns. The decision to shovel that ball here. Actually, it's right here. No, wait, I lost it. I thought I had it in front of me. At what point that was in the fourth quarter, but maybe it's not it's not as readily. It might've been third quarter actually. But anyway, that play, and I'm sure you know the one I'm talking about, was huge. It was the activity of Cat, the ability to actually get the rebound, and then the decision-making to shovel it to Ant for the 3. That was one of Cat's 3 assists in this game. Very, very impressive Cat game. And I thought the Wolves did a good job keeping him as kind of one of the focal points of the offense early. And for the most part, him staying on the floor, because we talked a little bit about Rudy's foul trouble already. For Cat to be as productive as he was, 28 and 10, lead the team in rebounding, was huge because of, it was underscored or magnified, I guess, because of the Rudy Gobert foul trouble. So that was really impressive from Karl-Anthony Towns. Another takeaway, the Timberwolves defensive activity, like I know they ended up giving up 116 in this game. It was the worst defensive result of any of the 4 games of the series. But Phoenix also shot 1 billion free throws. And that's only a slight exaggeration. Phoenix shot 36 free throws in this game. The Wolves had 31. There were just way too many fouls called, period, in this game. I mean, Devin Booker still shot 21 free throws. Nobody else in this game had more than 10. And Durant had 9. Ant had 10. So in terms of actual, and Phoenix did shoot over 50% from the field. But a huge part of that was Rudy's absence in the paint. So Phoenix was better in the paint than they had been all series, because they don't actually attempt that many shots at the rim anyway. We've talked about that on the show before. But the free throw shooting was the other big part of it. And, the Suns talked a big game about shooting a bunch of threes the last couple of games. The Wolves still shot more threes than them in game 3 and in game 4. Vogel said they wanted to shoot 40 threes. They shot 26 threes. The Wolves did an awesome job. The activity level of this team, the first quarter was off the charts. And I know they were down 1 at the end of the first quarter. The Wolves' activity defensively was completely off the charts. They were extending out to the half court line, to just deny catches. Like, they were the ball pressure and then denying catches off the ball was incredible by everybody. Like, Reid was out there near the timeline defending. It was crazy. And then there was, of course, that sequence that preceded the Ant poster around Beal and kind of over Durant, that possession right before it, where I think it was Beal. It was Gordon, almost got off a 3-pointer. Cat contested and forced him to pass the ball. The Wolves got into rotation. They doubled Durant at one point. They recovered. Nickeil Alexander-Walker steals the pass to the corner after Beal panics. Beal pump fakes from the left corner, drives. He should have just shot it either from the 3 in the first place or pulled up in the mid-range. And Beal tries to pass it to the left corner, or I guess the right corner, and Alexander-Walker steals the pass. It leads to the Ant dunk on the other end. Just a remarkable defensive sequence. And I mean, how many NBA teams could even do that if they tried? And frankly, the battle, especially the regular season, is having the stamina and the want to have a possession like that, period. That's a huge part of the battle. The other part of it is having the personnel, the length, the athleticism, and the IQ, basketball IQ, the knowledge to be able to pull that off. And the Timberwolves have both. And now they're going to get 6 or 7 days off to be fully rested. And of course, rust will be a concern in round 2, but to get this defense fully rested and just fly around. Remember game 1 against Phoenix, how the Wolves just flew around in the third quarter of that game and just ended up dominating down the stretch. And they got 2 days off before game 2, same deal. 2 days off before game 3, same deal. a well-rested Wolves defense. I truly, and I know I said this a bunch last week, I'm going to say it again, but having only one day off between these two games, I think that has something to do with, the kind of at times the waning in terms of the Wolves. I don't want to say effort, but you're just naturally going to be a little bit slower, a little bit, whatever, with one less day off of rest. And now a fully rested Timberwolves team going into round 2, they're going to be able to fly around in game 1. The shooting, the offense might be a little rusty. The defense should be on point because they're going to be well rested. And Rudy, by the way, also only played 25 minutes because of the foul trouble. So the defense was incredibly impressive once again for Minnesota in this game. I have a couple minor takeaways that are just kind of, rotation related, Rudy related, etc. And then we'll do studs and duds. We got to talk a little bit more about Ant. I haven't enough yet, but I mean, everyone else is too, right? We'll talk Ant, we'll talk Cat, and a couple more nuggets here. And that's how we'll nuggets, a couple more notes here from the game. And that's how we'll close out the show. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at DoorDash. Do you want to make your mom smile? Start Mother's Day with flowers or surprise her with gifts from the brand she loves delivered the very same day with DoorDash. Mother's Day is coming up. It's just around the corner. Not this weekend, but the next one. Does your mom have a sweet tooth? Is she a tech enthusiast, a beauty connoisseur, or is she outdoorsy? No matter what she's into, you can make her smile with a fruit or flower bouquet, makeup, tech gear, workout wear, and more. Pair flowers with a gift card so she can celebrate any way she wants. If she's a bookworm, try a bookstore gift card. Does she love a good latte? Get a gift card to her favorite coffee shop. You can't go wrong. There's tons of options. Get thoughtful gifts she deserves with the convenience you need. Choose same-day delivery or schedule a week ahead for when flowers and gifts should arrive to her door with DoorDash. Shop with savings that would make her proud. With a Dash Pass membership, you'll save with a $0 delivery fee and reduced service fees on eligible orders from Dash Pass merchants that meet the minimum subtotal. Other fees, including service fees, apply. Terms apply as well. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 more on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with the code LOCKEDONNBA. Again, that's LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. All right, a couple more quick notes here from this game. Let's talk about Rudy Gobert's free throw shooting. I know he only attempted 3 in this game, but I think he's just a really good free throw shooter now. The sample keeps growing. He was, I'm going to quick look at the game log here, but he hasn't missed a free throw hardly at all. He was 7 of 8 last game, 6 of 7 in each of the first 2 games. So he's 19 of 22. That's an 86+% clip, 86.4% clip in the postseason. But go back a little bit further. He was 7 of 9 in the regular season finale, 5 of 8 the game before that, 1 of 3 the game before that, 9 of 13 against Washington. So he was, for the month of April, he was a little bit above career. He's 63-ish%. He was 66% for April, but since mid-April, he improved dramatically. And then now in the playoffs, he's, what did I say? I guess he's 88%. No, wait, 86.4%. Yeah, that's what it is. 86.4% in this series against Phoenix. And it wasn't a super small sample. I mean, we're talking 22. He was 19 to 22 free throws. That's crazy. Keep an eye on that. Hopefully this week off, doesn't, 6 days or whatever it ends up being, doesn't hamper that at all for Rudy. Also, the Timberwolves were 10 of 15 on 3-point attempts in the second half of this game. They were not shooting the ball well in the first half. They started 1 of 11 or 1 of 12 from 3, and they finished shooting better than Phoenix did. They finished 41.7%. Phoenix was 38.5%. Alexander Walker was 0 for 5 in this game from outside the arc, which was a harsh kind of crash back down to earth for Nikhil based on how he shot it early in the series. But still 42% as a team. They were 6 of 8 in the third and 4 of 7 in the fourth. And 2 of those misses, I think 1 in the third, 1 in the fourth, were late shot clock heaves, like that Cat one toward the end of the game. Jaden kind of had one similar toward the end of the game as well. So you take a couple, 3 of those out, and it's just nuts. They were 10 of 12, 10 of 13 from outside the arc in the second half of this game if you take out those heaves. So crazy. The Wolves were a top 3-point shooting team percentage-wise during the regular season for a reason. And also the, Cats volume finally increased a little bit too. One more thing related to rotations in Phoenix. I meant to hit this earlier. I mentioned in passing that Eubanks didn't play in this game. They tried Nasir Little, and he was awful. Like, he could not stay in front of, or Cat scored around him. Somebody else scored. They tried to put him on someone else. That did not work. I don't know that he was better or worse than Drew Eubanks. Neither one of those guys played well in this series. And that, like, Josh Okogie wasn't in the rotation early in the series. Bol wasn't, and then he was in game 3, and then he wasn't in this game. And I get it. Frank Vogel's pushing different buttons to see what works. But Nasir Little played 7 minutes, had 1 rebound, was 0 of 1 shooting, committed 2 fouls. Okogie got into some foul trouble because of the way he plays. I thought he played well overall, and I would have used him much earlier in the series if I were Frank Vogel. I would have used Thad Young in this series if I were Frank Vogel, just for positional versatility. He played great in game 82 against the Wolves, a week plus ago, or I guess 2 weeks ago now. So I don't know. I thought that was strange, the rotation decisions by Phoenix, but it doesn't really matter if all those guys aren't as good. Small is small, right? And guys that aren't as good as other guys, that's going to matter over the course of a series. Now, it only took 4 games, for this thing to wrap up, but that's an example of depth and why it does matter. We always talk about how depth matters less in the playoffs. Well, it matters a little, and you need to have different levers you can pull if you find yourself down in a series. The Wolves have a few different directions they can go, right? They can play as big as anybody or as small as anybody and still have essentially the same capabilities out on the floor because of the way the roster was built. And that's a huge credit to Tim Conley. All right, studs and duds quickly. Obviously, Anthony Edwards, haven't talked enough about Ant, but everyone is talking about it. 40 points, 13 of 23 shooting, 7 of 13 on threes, 7 of 10 at the line. He did it from everywhere in this game. He also was second on the team with 9 rebounds, second on the team with 6 assists, tied for the team lead with 2 blocks, pitched in a steal, only had 2 turnovers. So 6 assists to 2 turnovers, and he had 23 shot attempts in this game, 41 minutes played. And he just didn't turn the ball over. There were so many plays we could pick out and just like gush over the way he played things. To me, still the most impressive thing was the overall decision-making. There was like one play in each of the last 2 games where I was like, bad choice by Ant. But that was it. Like, for as much as that dude has the ball in his hands, 1 or 2 plays a game to be like, man, wrong decision. Totally fine. Like, an incredible performance again by Anthony Edwards. He was like, the Suns were, the gap help was crazy once again. They were loading up on him as much or more as they were early in the series. It's almost like, I don't know. I mean, the Suns tried to do the same thing. And, well, Ant got off to a bit of a slow start and barely touched the ball early, then was like one of his first 5, took a couple of iffy shots trying to get rolling. But as soon as he hit, I actually think it was that corner 3. It was the corner 3 that I referenced earlier. That was in the 3rd quarter from Karl-Anthony Towns off that offensive rebound. And hit that corner 3. Couple possessions later, he hits a 3 from the left wing, kind of in transition. And he was just rolling at that point. He hit the tough left corner 3 a little bit later. Obviously, the massive dunk, got to the line a couple of times, started making his free throws after starting cold from the line. And it was just an avalanche. And as soon as Ant got hot, you knew it was over. You just knew it was over. 40 points on 23 shots. And like, this is one of those cases where we're not overselling what this guy's doing. Like, this isn't, it's crazy how good he has become and how quickly he's become this good. And Kevin Durant said as much after the game. He said Ant's his favorite player to watch. Like, everybody, he's such a well-rounded player. There really aren't any holes to his game. There's areas that are a little bit rougher than others, right? Like, occasionally the handle gets loose. The off-ball defense, still there's some lapses. Sometimes he tries to make the hero pass more so than the hero shot occasionally. But, like, I'm nitpicking, right? He is legitimately got to be one of the most well-rounded players. Somebody just the other day I was watching called him the best 2-way player in the NBA right now, and he probably is. In terms of the level of defense and offense, right? Like, there's other guys that, SGA's in that conversation. Like, there aren't many guys that are in that conversation in terms of being that well-rounded and being a plus defender and a plus offensive player. It's so unbelievable how good he is at this point. Karl-Anthony Towns, also a stud, 28 and 10. We talked a little bit about him already. 11 of 17 from the field, 4 of 6 from 3, 3 assists, 0 turnovers. And he was able to play 39 minutes in a game where Rudy was saddled with foul trouble. Rudy turned it over 4 times. Rudy only played 25 minutes. By far his worst game of the series, by far Cat's best game of the series. One of Cat's best all-around games ever. He was good defensively. He was great offensively. The decision-making was nearly impeccable from Karl-Anthony Towns. Very impressive performance. And I don't want it to get lost. And it doesn't matter, but on the national level, it's going to get lost because we're going to be talking about Ants 49-6 and 49-6, and rightfully so. But don't lose the Karl-Anthony Towns piece of this, because the Wolves can win the title. They absolutely can. They can't do it with just Ant and some role players. They have to have Karl-Anthony Towns come along and be that secondary scorer, and he absolutely was in this game. Third stud, Jaden McDaniels. That's an easy one. Remember, he had 25 points. So it was a game 2. He had 18 in this one. He had 10 very early, then had a couple of big plays late that kind of flew under the radar. And it was the activity level. And we talked about that early in the series. He talked about the coaching staff and Chris Finch specifically telling him, hey, crash the glass from the weak corner. You're going to get some buckets. That's exactly what he did in a couple of big moments in this game. He had 2 offensive rebounds, and I think they both resulted in baskets for him in the paint. 18 points on 6 of 12, 1 of 4 outside the arc, perfect 5 of 5 at the line, 3 rebounds and a block. And yes, the Suns had a couple guys go off, but Jaden had the assignments in this series are so tough. So tough, and he was fantastic. I don't have any duds. You can't have duds when the Wolves sweep a series. Conley was 2 of 10 shooting. He missed his first, 6 shots or something, but he hit a big 3 late. He had 7 assists to 2 turnovers, and he was a plus 16 in this game. Phoenix is a team without a point guard. That showed in this series. Even Rudy was a plus 10 in this game, only played 25 minutes because the Wolves defense was that much better with him on the floor. And I know even with Rudy off the floor in the regular season, the Wolves defensive ratings actually would have been the best in the league, but they're so good with Rudy on the floor, and Phoenix is still a good offensive team, right? Nikhil, really good defensively in this game too. And I thought played well overall, hit a couple of tough 2-pointers, even though the 3-point shot wasn't hitting. Kyle Anderson was effective. Kyle Anderson had 7 rebounds in 17 minutes. Don't let that go unnoticed. I mean, the Wolves out-rebounded Phoenix by 11. The Wolves had 17 offensive rebounds in this game. Those 50-50 balls floating around in the middle of the floor, the Wolves got to all of those in the second half, it seemed like. That was a huge theme, especially in games 3 and 4 of this series. Minnesota getting 17 offensive rebounds is huge. That does not happen very often for this Wolves team. That was big. All right. That's all for my takeaways. I had a lot of takeaways. There's so much to get to this week. We'll do a little bit more series wrap-up here the next couple of days before we kind of shift. At some point, assuming it is Denver, we'll do a crossover episode with either Adam or Matt, I guess, over at Locked On Nuggets. So we'll do a crossover episode at some point. That'll be upcoming later in the week. Depends on how long the Lakers are able to last against Denver. One more game. Or I guess, no, not one more game in LA. They're back in Denver for game 5 on Monday night. So likely the series wraps up. So I would guess maybe Thursday's episode, maybe Friday would be the crossover episode with the Nuggets. But lots to get to eventually preview that series. A fun week ahead as we look ahead to next weekend. Either Saturday or Sunday will be game 1 of the second round. You don't need me to tell you the history, but I'm going to anyway. It's been since 2004 since the Wolves won a series. They've never swept a series. There's no Minnesota sports team that's ever had a sweep in a best of 7 series. The Lynx had some sweeps in best of 5 series. The Twins had a best of 3 sweep last year or whatever, but like nobody swept 4 games in a best of 7 in Minnesota sports history. The Wolves haven't won a series since 2004, 20 years ago. And they're going to run into a really tough matchup against Denver, but this team can beat Denver. I know my prediction was off in this round. I'm not going to run from it. I've already seen people, hitting me up about it. It's fine. That's why I make the prediction, right? Like that's part of the gig here. I said Suns in 7. I didn't think Phoenix would fold the way they did. Obviously the Wolves are an incredible team. I'm not about to make a prediction yet for next round, but the Wolves absolutely can win the series over the Nuggets. They absolutely can. And if they do, I mean, like they could be the favorites to win the title, right? Boston's had some well-documented playoff troubles. There's lots to get to over the coming days, to talk about this. I don't want to get too massively big picture on this, but it's going to be a ton of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And you can follow on X at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.